Workforce, Diversity, and Equity as Michigan's Competitive Edge is hosted by JPMorgan Chase & Company. Please welcome Lieutenant Governor of the State of Michigan, Garlin Gilchrist II, Executive Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at General Motors, Tammy Golden, Chief Strategy Officer at Detroit at Work, Dana Williams. And to moderate the discussion, please welcome Michigan Market President at JPMorgan Chase, Jason Tinsley.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. We know there's a lot of competing interest at this time slot, so we're glad that you all decided to spend it with us. Super excited to have you here. Just a couple of housekeeping items. We want this to be, towards the end, a very open with conversation. So we want to. There are cue cards or little blue cards on your table. Feel free if you have questions based on our content. If you want to fill them out, somebody will come around and pick them up. And we will add that to our conversation because we want you all to be a part of it. So glad to have you all here, and again, thank you for joining us. So you saw the title, so I think you got a good idea of what we want to talk about. I know for me this is a super important topic. As a lifelong Detroiter, lifelong resident of Michigan, tired of seeing the numbers not necessarily being where you want them to be as far as our ability to accelerate growth from an academic standpoint, as far as the students here in the state of Michigan, specifically southeastern Michigan, and the ability to be able to capture the right type of jobs that we need to have a thriving community. I know one of the things from JPMorgan Chase's perspective is we decided to double down here almost 10 years ago to really figure out as a litmus, like what could we do to be a part of this. So Detroit ended up kind of being like a striving model for inclusive growth for us. And from a strategic standpoint, we made a long-term investment in Detroit to see if we could really dig deep into what we could do here and then be able to take that to other cities. So Detroit became a roadmap for a lot of our philanthropic and business investments across the globe. But in Detroit since 2014, specifically in the space of putting capital in place for workforce development, we've put almost $30 million in Detroit to really aid in that effort. It's not enough. The goal was to always be a catalyst or for it to be leveraged, which you think it is, but it just kind of opens the door to conversations as to what it actually looks like for us to be really deep into workforce equity. So what I want to do with my esteemed panel, and their titles speak for themselves, but as they answer the questions, they'll tell you a little bit more about who they are and what they do. But I would love to hear from just two of you, and I don't really care who goes, who doesn't, but just maybe briefly talk about why is workforce equity important to the future of work in this region and for the state of Michigan? And then as a follow-up, what are a couple of things that are really headwinds or that are getting in the way for us to truly have an equitable workforce?
You want to kick it off?
Sure. All right, Jason, I'll kick it off. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, my name is Dana Williams, and I'm Chief Strategy Officer for Detroit at Work. Essentially, we are the City of Detroit's Workforce Development Agency, and my role specifically is to lead the development of the strategy and execution upon which the system operates. So that's how we connect with other systems that complement the services that we provide, how we engage with employers, as well as the education and those partnerships in both community college as well as P through 12. And so when I think about workforce equity, it's really a three-pronged issue. So the first is if you're doing it right, then number one, it's good for the economy. Jason, to your point, the talent then is able to access all the opportunities that are going to be coming here and that are already here, both for the state as well as for the city of Detroit specifically. If we've got all these new businesses coming, if construction is happening, but we don't have people to execute that work, then it just won't happen. So it's key for the economy, certainly. The second is that it's good for business. We already know the ROI of diversity, that diversity of thought, diversity of experience, as well as our cultural diversity adds to increased innovation, which in today's business landscape is critical to be able to execute all sorts of things. I know GM can appreciate that. And then lastly, of course, it's good for people. We as a state, we know we've got issues with poverty. We have people who are what are called as ALICE, right? So they're essentially the working poor. Mm-hmm. They have money, but they still just can't make it through. And so having additional opportunities for them to have jobs, good jobs, means that it steadies families across the entire state. And so we would then transform not only individual lives, but our economy as a whole.
Got it.
Absolutely. Hi, good morning. I'm Tammy Golden, the Executive Director for Workforce Strategy at General Motors. And I currently have been fortunate enough to go full circle in my career back to HR doing very purposeful work when you talk about this workforce strategy and some of the initiatives around workforce equity. When you talk about workforce equity, equity leads to economic growth, which leads to health and wellness in our communities. And that's what makes it so critical when you talk about putting the effort into those initiatives that close the economic gaps. So when you look at it, and I'm going to talk more because I agree with everything you said, talk more about some of the challenges. When you think about the talent and focusing on the talent, and you're talking about closing this equity gap, I think some of the challenges are around the education. And when I say education, I'm talking about awareness and how we make people aware of what opportunities exist, whether we educate them by degree or by skill. And then when you look at it through the lens of really preparing them to be successful for opportunities. And then when you look at it through the lens of really closing that gap, it comes down to how we really wrap our arms around nurturing them through the process. And so when you look at that, and we talked last night about the fact too that the talent today look through a different lens in terms of their needs and desires. We have to be ready also to look at the fact that people prioritize flexibility over compensation and how we really embrace that as well.
So before I get to Lieutenant Governor, I want to land on that point a little stronger. Tammy, upskilling and reskilling, those aren't new ideas. And I know there's a lot of energy around that for corporations, especially larger ones that can almost hire at a skills-based level as opposed to just a degree-based level. But I know you guys are doing transformational stuff at General Motors. Maybe touch on specifically how you're looking at that through the lens of, let me just get the best person available and equip them, and then I can teach them what they need to know, irrespective of community college, high school, U of M, Michigan State. Like, talk about what that looks like for GM.
So GM, we actually started to travel very thoughtfully down this path, because the one thing we know is that we have to put the individual at the center of any decisions around the skills-based hiring initiatives. And so what we've done is really set ourselves and as a founding member for 110. 110 is an organization, it's a coalition of 60 employers that have come together to commit to hiring 1 million Black talent over the next 10 years.
Wow.
And together we worked to build this ecosystem around skills-based hiring. We also have committed to the Business Roundtable. We chair it. And the Business Roundtable also looks through the lens of how do we create equity around skills-based hiring. And that we do that through the Multiple Pathways Initiative. As well, we recently teamed up with Udacity. That's where I met Dana. And we're working to ready talent. What we've learned is that it's key is, as much as offering an opportunity to a person, is making sure they're ready to take on that opportunity and be successful. So working with Udacity, which is a talent developer, they develop tech talent. We've offered scholarships for folks to, in the underrepresented communities, to go through the program, come in at a base level of knowledge, and we feel that we're setting them up for success by doing it that way. The other thing that has been very important is the partnerships and relationships that we developed. So I got a chance to, again, work with Detroit at Work, Opportunity at Work, and really explore how we approach this so that we, have the best methods behind how we, engage talent. So developing those partnerships have been key as well.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And then that makes sense for, again, larger corporations. But I guess my question for you, Lieutenant Governor, when we look at the landscape, the majority of businesses anywhere in the U.S. and even in Michigan are going to be small businesses, mid-sized businesses, revenues typically under 50 million. So but they're impactful to the community. Manufacturing is very big here. Maybe touch on what the landscape looks like for the state of Michigan to step in and help those size private businesses retool and keep the competitive edge focused for acquiring talent for their businesses.
Sure, I appreciate that. So I think the place I would start is with the fact that when we think of our communities, we think about business in our communities really in two ways. You have these kind of identity-defining large businesses like General Motors. I'm a GM kid, my mother's a GM retiree, everybody's connected to somebody who's a GM retiree. And then when you think on a neighborhood level, you think about the fact that the smallest businesses in our communities are the ones that define the identities of our neighborhoods. The store on the corner, the coffee spot, the restaurant that you might frequent, whatever. Like, these are the places that define our neighborhoods. And so one of the things that's really important is that those types of businesses have a pathway to even have a chance at being successful. And part of success for a business is, there's an equation that involves, like, do I have the capital for this to be successful? Do I have the people? Do I have the infrastructure to make sure? And so at the state level, the governor and I are trying to create the conditions for all the elements of that equation to be available to people, and to a broad range of people who either are or have the potential to be business owners. Mm-hmm. And so for this question on talent and the opportunity that talent creates, one, we have to recognize that not everyone has seen themselves either as having the capacity to start or manage a business, mm-hmm. or some people are, even though small businesses create a large share, if not the majority of jobs in our communities, some people are just like nervous about working for a small business, right? Mm-hmm. Because they're like, well, what's going to happen or what could happen? I was one of those people, as someone coming up. And so what we are trying to do is make sure that the businesses in our community, that people can have the confidence in them to recognize that they can, that a role at that business could be a chapter of their career. Mm-hmm. And so this has meant making sure that people, as those who would be potentially working in these jobs, have the pathways to the types of credentials, education, and training to be able to be qualified, because whether it's a program like Michigan Reconnect, a program like Futures for Frontliners, these tuition-free programs that provide tuition-free pathways to higher education or professional training and certification to meet the very specific needs of some small businesses that have, and when they're talking about they're having challenges hiring, it's because they need like specific types of people. So we want to widen the group of people for whom that is available, and certainly Detroit at Work has been a really great partner in that. Mm-hmm. And the second part, though, is actually making sure that those businesses have the capital to expand. And so using tools of the state resources, for example, the state of Michigan is one of the first 5 states to receive the second round of funding from the federal government called the State Small Business Credit Initiative, SSBCI. The state of Michigan will be leveraging those resources to become an investor and a partner in how businesses can grow at different stages of their life cycle, including that stage where they need to expand. They need to grow. And expansion can only go as far as your people can take you. So we think that if we play that role, we're creating the conditions for more businesses to be successful and have part of that success to grow their impact by growing their teams.
And you touched on Detroit at Works, but maybe like how is the state getting the word out so people are aware of these programs, or what can we do as citizens of this state to help carry the message and get it out? Because that's my concern is great programs get left on the shelf because people aren't aware or they don't know where to call.
Mm-hmm. Or that not all of the people who should be aware are aware.
Right.
And I think there is a multitude of responsibility to go around for that. I think that we as state government have a responsibility to make sure that not only are we shouting very loud about these programs, but that we actually are finding new partners to partner with. The number one complaint that I hear from small business owners in Michigan when it comes to programming like this, funding and capital resources available, is that they say that this money is available, but it doesn't get where it needs to go. Right. It doesn't get to the people who need it. And part of that is an artifact of the state having only worked traditionally, historically, with a small number of organizations or the same organizations in every community. And so we have a responsibility now to broaden our perspective and broaden our reach by making some new partnerships with new organizations about how we can get these resources out there. The second part of that, though, is on business owners who have benefited from these programs. Need to talk about that. Those who have participated. You know, I participated in a program with DEGC a few weeks ago, and the challenge I put out to those who were participating in this, really resource fair that happened was, all right, well, like, how many of y'all participated in the, $400 million plus small business support program that we made available from the state of Michigan? And 50, 60% people raised their hand. And well, did y'all tell anybody else about the program? This does not have to be zero sum, I'm serious. And so I think that we have a collective responsibility as well to recognize that there is enough abundance for us all to eat. In Michigan right now, the state of Michigan is in a posture to invest in communities in a way that we have not been able to do for 2 generations. So we all need to be talking about that opportunity and how there is something for all of us. There's a role to play. There's an opportunity for everyone, every enterprise, every employee and employer in this moment right now if we step up to meet it. So that collective responsibility needs to be shared by all of us.
Got it. Thank you. All right, and just as a reminder, if you have questions, there are blue cards on your table. You can just wave your hand. I'll come around and get them because we'll be moving to the Q&A period in a little while. So Dana, I got some tough stats here.
Uh-oh. Yes, sir.
We see them as opportunities, but we'll talk about it, and then I'll kind of throw a question at you.
Okay.
So the Regional Chamber released its 2022 State of Education Report, and if the alarm bells weren't ringing, they definitely are now. 74% of the City of Detroit students pursuing post-secondary education have not earned a degree or a certificate within 6 years of leaving high school. Students enrolling in college that graduated from high-poverty high schools have fallen from 55% to 45% as of 2020. Adult graduation rates have decreased 24% over the past 5 years, and only 8% of the jobs in the region require no formal education and pay a middle-class income. Right? So the story is we got to ramp up. But I guess my question to you specifically would be, based on what you're doing, what are some of the skill-based learning models or strategies that you're working on to help enhance that space for our students, our children here in the city of Detroit?
Mm-hmm. Well, in Detroit, we are focused on a scalable strategy that's called the People Plan. And it was enacted actually pre-COVID. And the purpose of it is to specifically upskill Black and brown Detroiters, and we say that very intentionally so that there's an equity focus, so that they can take advantage of all the economic development opportunities that are coming to the city. What we didn't want to happen was that there's new construction happening, there are new parks in place, there's all these changes, and the people that have been in the city for years and years, the legacy Detroiters who love their city, were going to be left behind. And so this strategy has now been recoined by the mayor as the $100 million Detroit Scholarship Program. There literally is that much money, to the governor's point, to the lieutenant governor's point. Ooh, I wonder if that one.
You've been promoted.
You're not the first to make that mistake.
But there is money here to help people. And so our programs, informed and funded by those dollars, do a couple of things, right? So we know that there are about 80,000 Detroiters without a high school diploma. And a high school diploma is kind of your first ticket into many jobs. We also know that there are people who have their high school diploma who yet still don't have the skills that they need to participate fully in the training programs that we offer. We then also realize that folks are working today, but they may want to upskill. And they don't have the time, though, because they have families to support, to stop what they're doing, train, go to school, take advantage of Michigan Reconnect, and then start a new career all over. And so our programs also offer the chance for people to earn while they earn. And then lastly, we know that folks don't necessarily even know what a full career path looks like. They're like, what is a job in manufacturing? What is a tech job? What does it mean to work in healthcare? And so our programs do 2 things. So one, they pay people to do all of that. So you can actually earn a stipend and a wage to get your high school diploma or the equivalency, depending on how far out from school you are. You can earn and actually be connected to an actual employer Most of those are small and mid-sized businesses in the city. They're the ones that are doing the demolition work downtown, the ones that are building the new parks and various large construction projects that are happening. And you can actually earn a wage and have almost a guarantee of a job at the end of that training. And then third, all of that comes, of course, with all sorts of wraparound supports for things like transportation, childcare, and housing insecurity that we know remains and that stops people from staying in those jobs. And so we have support and resources here that are available for people. Again, to the Lieutenant Governor's point, our new challenge is to think about marketing this in a different and a new way, to think about going into the neighborhoods. Maybe it's time to do door knocking campaigns again. Because we know Detroit is also a city of word of mouth. And as much marketing as we do on TV, as much as we talk as the business community about these resources, we still know that there are people sitting in their homes that just aren't able to be connected to all of these resources that are out there. And so we're thinking of new ways to do that. But the resources are here, the programs are here, and we're ready to support.
So just as a follow-up to that, and the mayor spoke on a panel yesterday, he talked about the young man who was making $15 an hour selling drugs, but we were able to get him, I think, a job making $16 an hour doing demolition work. I guess my question is, like, what is that partnership for the city like? Is it like vendors to the city? You're expecting them to do this? Is it kind of, expected and inspected? Like, how do we make sure that these companies that come in and do work in our city, they're looking at our employees, or looking at our citizens to take these jobs and become well-abled employees and perform? Yeah,
thank you for that. So one, what's super exciting is that now, because this work is led on a day-to-day basis by Nicole Sherrod-Freeman on behalf of the mayor, we have instituted what are called priority hiring agreements. Okay. And so when there are new economic development deals that are coming to the city, we are there right with the DEGC or the JET team, whoever it might be, to have those conversations first. To say, hey, you're gonna come here, you're gonna invest. These are the sorts of things we expect you to do. Maybe you can give Detroiters priority in your hiring process or in your application process. Maybe you can fund a special training program and help and develop something special with us. Maybe you can participate in GDYT, the Grow Detroit's Young Talent Program, and hire young people so that there are future opportunities for folks as well. So that's one piece. The other is that we work very closely with the City of Detroit Civil Rights Inclusion and Opportunity Department, so that if there are companies that are not meeting their 51% requirement, that we can actually help them. And a lot of those, again, are small and mid-sized businesses in the city. And even the employers don't know. We talk about the individuals not really knowing what services are out there, but the employers don't know either. So we talk to them and they're like, wait, I can get all that for free? I was like, yeah. We can market your job to 40,000 people in our database, and we can help build a customized training program with you. Some of our providers here in this room, thank you for being here, and do all sorts of other things to help solve those challenges. And we can do it on a customized level. And again, for free.
And I'll jump in there because I think that was key for us, seeking to understand that, because the wraparound services are key to the success of the individuals, and to know that there's a group that can help you build that out and you can turn to is key, because you don't know that. And I didn't know that until I came to meet Nicole as well as Dana. So when you think about it from the standpoint of taking on skills-based hiring or any of these types of reframing of your talent strategies, you need partners. You need to partner in this.
Lieutenant Governor, are there similar structured programs that encourage these corporations and these businesses to, when they're looking at doing business here, to make sure that they're accounting for the people who live here compared to the city?
Yeah, it's part of the conversation that we have with the economic development. So we've had since December in particular, the governor negotiated a pretty major economic development investment and incentive package that we look to build on in a supplemental budget this spring. And that was about retention and attraction of employers large and small, and certainly the jobs that would have the potential to be created or expanded are a big reason why we want these deals to happen. Now, when that does happen, we certainly want them to prioritize and have worked with them to, put in place an understanding about how they need to prioritize Michiganders, how they can work with the training programs that we have prioritized, made available, been fully funded on a bipartisan basis in every budget since 2020. These kind of resources, we have some We have some specific constraints around identity that we have to work around at the state level, some constitutional constraints. But nevertheless, the message that we send is that there is an abundance of talent in Michigan.
Yes.
An abundance of talent. Now, if we need to equip those talented people with an effective way to demonstrate or communicate their talent to you as an employer, then we will put in place the programming to do that and work with partners to make that happen, whether it's Detroit at Works, whether it's Michigan Works, whether it's, again, programming like Michigan Reconnect or Future Frontliners, whether it's working with companies like GM with programs like our Going Pro program, which supports employer-based programs that result in industry-recognized credentials that can then follow a person perhaps to a new opportunity in their career. We are making sure that those who are choosing to invest in Michigan are doing so because that kind of talent is available to them, and it may be available to them in places they may not normally look. And so we're going to continue to emphasize that. I mean, even with the announcement that you heard today from Ford, a core part of that expansion is about how are we creating more opportunity for people currently in Michigan to take advantage of the opportunities that exist in the evolving mobility landscape. And that's a real priority for us for our growth of the state going forward.
Thank you. Tammy, I want to pivot a little bit because we're talking about Michigan, we're talking about Detroit, but you work for a global company. Maybe give us some insight or shed some light on what other cities, states, countries are doing, things that maybe make you and GM feel good about the direction they're going in that we could replicate or duplicate?
So as we participate with a number of the coalitions, this talent strategy around skills-based and focusing on more than just degrees is going across the nation. And everybody is adopting, the partnerships that I talked about, as well as looking at how they reframe their talent strategy. So one of the things you don't want to do is create an initiative. If it becomes an initiative, you know what happens, right? Program of the month. You really want to build it into your talent strategy so that it becomes something that's sustainable over time. And so one of the things that I preach is that as we seek to pilot and learn and collaborate through this, we now take a step back and look at how we build it into, new resources like Opportunity at Work to source into communities where you have the underserved population. But you see it across the nation. All 60 of those employers that are engaging with 110 are all looking at that type of framework as they execute across the nation. And it's pretty exciting because sharing across is what helps us go a lot faster. And so I've been excited there. And then we have 80 member companies also in the BRT. So think about the fact that all of us are coming together, sharing these ideas, sharing our strategies so that we can excel at a much faster pace.
Okay, so it sounds competitive across the entire landscape.
Absolutely.
And we're Michigan, we want to win. We don't want to be in last place. Maybe we'll go around with just one quick answer to this question, then we'll take some from our audience. Michigan is currently trailing, but the goal is to not only get ahead, but lead. What's one investment that we can make today with cross-sector support to help get Michigan back in the game? And we'll start with Dana and we'll finish with the governor. Lieutenant Governor, see, I did it. Lieutenant Governor.
Well, one, and I think we've all kind of touched on it, right? So we know that the state is already actually a little bit focused on it with programs like Michigan Reconnect, but I think continued investments in our education system from the top down is really going to be transformational. And that is the community college system, ensuring that relationships with employers stay strong and even improve so that the skills that we're training for are actually moving at the speed of business. The second is, of course, then the K-12 system, right? We know that, and these issues were just exacerbated by COVID, right. That we've got some academic recovery to do. And if we don't do it fast, we're going to lose an entire generation of young people and the future of our workforce. The third is pre-K. and early education. That is critical. We know that the mayor of Detroit is certainly focused on that. And there are all sorts of efforts already in play, but we have to ensure that our youngest folks are set on the right path from the very beginning. That also frees up their parents to be able to go to work when there's a solid early education system in place. And so I think just general investments in all sorts of our education system would be transformational and really help us to move forward.
Absolutely, and I just cannot say enough about the fact that we really have to invest in our youth. When you look at everything that we're talking about, it really starts in middle school. Middle school is a key time to really hook our youth. And so looking at how we influence the curriculums, I think is really key into how we're going to really sustain and really have sustainable change when you talk about the future. So for me, that is key. And even if you look at how we invest as employers, continuing to invest in literacy programs and the things that help shape that, but again, getting it to the youth and ensuring that we tap the middle school age so that we have sustainable change. So.
I appreciate it when build on what both of you said. I do want to, I don't know that I fully accept the premise of the question. Let me say that in terms of, I think again, the announcement that we've seen today and the announcement, the historic announcement from investment from General Motors early this year is a demonstration of the state of Michigan's, the work that we are continuing to do in the space of making sure that we're attracting the kind of, transformative generational projects that we need to have here in the state. So just want to be clear about that. Now, having said that, I do think that what my co-panelists have mentioned is critically important. I just want to put some numbers on what that looks like at the state level. So when we talk about access to childcare and early childhood educational experiences, just about 3 weeks ago now, I announced a program called Caring for My Future. It's a $100 million investment here from the state of Michigan that is seeking to open 1,000 new child care facilities in the state of Michigan over the next 2 years. It's the most aggressive expansion of child care access in the history of the state of Michigan. And the reason that that is important is because, I will speak as a parent, nothing unlocks parental productivity like a place to put your children. And so we need more. Every daycare facility in the state of Michigan has a wait list that is at least as long as its current capacity. And so we need to scale up this opportunity. Now, doing so is an economic driver for many reasons, not the least of which is because, one, this will bring new people into the entrepreneurial fold because, the types of entrepreneurs who start childcare businesses are on balance women. When those are happening in communities of color, those are on balance women of color who are starting those businesses. And those are new jobs that we have sought to raise the wage for here in the state of Michigan to be childcare professionals. And by the way, you can get the training and certification you need that tuition free through a program like Michigan Reconnect. So we do think that those are, that's it's basically the perfect business creating a childcare. I want more people to do it. And so we think that those kinds of investments, and that is the kind of human infrastructure that enables the human capital and capacity of Michiganders to be able to meet these economic opportunities of today and tomorrow and do so in a broad-based way. A daycare in your community will allow people to be more productive in your community. We do not have enough of them in the city of Detroit. We have enough of them in communities that are fighting persistent poverty across the state of Michigan. And so we've sought to put a significant investment on that. And those experiences will bear fruit today and then tomorrow for how you're positioning young people to be the types of early learners and readers that we need them to be to take advantage of these opportunities. And the last thing I would say is we need to also continue to put emphasis on exposure experiences for both young people and actually for mid-career professionals. The truth is when we're talking about this notion of, I can't find talent, a worker shortage, et cetera, we have to be real about part of that reason that that's happening is because people have rethought their relationship with their job. Like maybe they didn't come back to the job, but they didn't like it.
Right.
And guess what? People change jobs. My wife changed jobs during the pandemic. So I think we need to be honest about that. And so then as employers, there needs to be some introspection as to what are we doing to create the kind of place where talented people want to be. In the state of Michigan, we are trying to create the conditions for talented people to want to live and work in Michigan and build their families and their futures in Michigan. So in addition to all the stuff we're doing to support this kind of business infrastructure, the infrastructure of childcare and those kind of resources, we also need to create communities that are strong and vibrant and attractive. That's why we're building towards universal internet access with a $250 million investment we just put forward earlier this year through the Building Michigan Together plan. And so we've made transformational investments in our park systems and outdoor spaces. $400 million investment that every state park and most municipal parks will get improvements thanks to state resources to build these beautiful places where people want to see themselves and see their families grow. This will help make sure that the talent is available and accessible for the companies that want to invest here.
Yeah, to your second point, and I know we talked about this last night, Tammy and Dana, that is something that we're faced with, right? There's 5 million jobs available out there right now in the U.S. that nobody's claiming. Part of it is there's a lack of, you're not accounting for people who've made a seismic shift, either coming out of the global financial crisis of 08, 09, or coming out of the pandemic of the last couple of years, is that maybe a 9-to-5 job at 15 to 20 bucks an hour is not part of what drives them for the life ahead. And we're not accounting for the gig economy that's brought forth Uber and Instacart and all these type of opportunities where you set your own schedule and make the money you need to live. Because many of us in this room were sold the idea of the American dream is you make 6 figures, you have your own home that you own with 2 cars in the garage, the nuclear family. And I don't know, I talk to people now, it's like, I just want to go to my kid's game and I want to be home by 5 o'clock. I want dinner on the table at 7. And oh, guess what? I want the weekends to myself. So corporations like JPMorgan Chase and General Motors and others, we have to recalibrate how we make the place that we work comfortable for everyone, because that is a seismic shift for us as well through hiring practices.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, I said it earlier that compensation is not number one on people's list in terms of making their decisions. It's really coming down to, do I want to work there, and do you provide the level of flexibility that I want? And so I was pretty proud that we were able to shift to what we call work appropriately. And all that says is that you're able to get your work done where you feel best, where you can be your best self and execute to your goals and your success. And that has really changed how people look at staffing. So as I started to staff up, it was clear that if you didn't have that flexible option, people didn't necessarily gravitate your way. So from a talent attraction perspective, COVID created that shift for us, and I think that shift is here to stay. So
Sure. It definitely is, and one thing that I'm going to be curious to see, so along those same lines, we used to see employers try to sell, hey, come be one of us.
Yep.
And people don't necessarily want that anymore. Now I believe the message will be, come here where you can be you.
yes.
And give you the resources to live the life that you want to lead.
Absolutely.
And so I hope that I begin to see that.
Excellent. So we have some questions. We still have time for more. If you have some, just raise your hand. But I'm going to walk through these, and then whoever wants to jump in first, feel free. Can the panelists talk about how our workforce system is looking at the future of career navigation? How do we move from just getting someone from A to B to true career navigation and promotion?
I'll jump in here because we have actually already started to think about that. So as the workforce system, the city of Detroit operates, we've got 9 career centers. Some of, again, our partners are here, thank you, all around the city. And so that means that we have career coaches and resource navigators everywhere. And so while we have a model for how that career coaching takes place, we're going to be looking to enhance that model, both with more people as well as with more tools. So we in the city are conditioned and operated around target industries as well as occupations that we know are going to be high growth. And so what we've first established is simply a brochure just to say, hey, you're looking for a job in healthcare? Well, here's some options. Here's what you can make. Here's what the job kind of is. And so that's kind of a first step. In addition to that, we'll be moving forward thanks to some philanthropic dollars with also designing an online system for that. right? We know we have to move to online. The next generation wants to be able to navigate skills that way. And so then it will become a roadmap online for how you begin to navigate. And then the third piece of that will then be connecting, well, what skills do you have that will actually help you along that career path and along that journey. So we certainly have already started that. We'll have to make sure that we vet that information with our training partners and community colleges and certainly employers to make sure that it's real. But our career exploration and navigation is actually already in play.
Absolutely. And we just launched for all our people leaders what we call talent spotting. And what it is recalibrating all our people leaders around identifying each individual's potential. And so when you think about that from the standpoint of trying to navigate your career, a lot of times, especially as you're coming into new companies, it's hard to understand what that means or what that looks like. So that talent spotting program that we're rolling out to all people leaders is allowing them to assess potential so that you can set a person on a path based on where their passions lie or otherwise, and then help them kind of navigate their way through their careers. In the past, you come into a big company like General Motors, it's global, and you're like, I want to be this, I want to be that. I'm not sure what I want to be, right? But I know I'm here now. And so the talent spotting, and I am really focusing on an individual's potential, because not everybody wants to be the CEO. But you want to make sure that you can cultivate their passions and their desires to be relevant or, productive. You want to be able to do that. So we do it through that program.
All right. And then next question. How can we better inform companies of bias built into their hiring systems? These are real barriers to talented applicants not even getting to an interview, applicants that come through traditional platforms.
So I can start. I can tell you that we put a lot of attention on mitigating bias from our candidate pools, ensuring that they're diverse, to our interview pools as well, ensuring that they're diverse. And when you take on skills-based hiring, the cool thing is it really makes you think about all of that in terms of the biases that can be presented. So when you look at our hiring managers, we know that key to a hiring manager right now is operating with an inclusive mindset so that you kind of tear down those biases up front. And so we're doing a lot of training from that perspective. We are training all our people leaders in inclusive leadership so that they can start to embrace everyone and not necessarily always lean toward who they think is best, right? And open up that mindset. So it takes a bit of a journey to kind of get people traveling that path, but I'm pretty excited about some of the reception we've gotten since we've kicked it off. And the fact that people are being more intentional about how they engage around inclusivity.
Right, and I can speak to that for JPMorgan, very similar. I mean, most corporations have kind of moved in that direction, but where we've doubled down on it is that diverse slates are an imperative, but as you look at diversity amongst your team, it can impact your incentive compensation package if you haven't moved in that direction. So the one surefire way to get people to change their behaviors is mess with the money. So, may not be it's a bit of a negative reinforcement, but nonetheless, when you're trying to drive behavior, sometimes you have to take matters into your own hands. I think from a corporate standpoint, we understand the business case for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and what it means to, when you have a diverse team, you have a diverse thought, you come up with new solutions and products for your customers. So it only makes sense to make sure that we're being thoughtful about it as we go about our hiring practices. And then also in our promotion practices, no more of this slide somebody into a job. You have to post a rec, and you must vocally and verbally put it out there that you're hiring somebody, this role is available. And then you must internally interview and have a diverse slate, right? So like these type of behaviors open up opportunities to make sure that there'll be more people like me in the role that I'm in, a lot quicker than it took me to get here, right? So that's what we have to be able to do, and it's incumbent upon people to advocate and rally vocally at shareholder meetings. We're fine with that. We understand the importance of that. It's important for all of our community partners to make sure you hold us accountable, to make sure that we're pushing towards that, and that we're We're never moving back to where we went before, where things were done in the dark.
And to your point of not moving back, our motto is leaders create the climate that inspires the culture. And in order for us to really see that sustainable change, we really have to double down on that. That if the climate's not right, we have to double back to, okay, what are we projecting as leaders? And so the goal is sustainable change.
And now these are two, of course, leading companies in the world. But here locally, as the Detroit at Work system, we touch about 2,000 employers a year. And so in our consulting with them just on simple recruiting for their jobs that they have on a day-to-day basis, we just ask them to think about the question and their application process. Is there anything in this process that would bar someone who's maybe differently abled in some way from not being able to? And what's the workaround that we should direct them to if so? Are you open to hiring returning citizens or those with a justice-involved past of some kind? And what is the culture like within your organization? Would people feel unwelcome from some way? What does orientation look like and those sorts of things? So we're touching the maybe smaller businesses and just asking them to stop and ask the question so that they can be as inclusive as possible.
All right. And Dana, you have two questions here.
Oh.
I'll paraphrase and maybe make it bring them together. The first just talks about sometimes even in our own Detroit community, there are cultural inhibitors. Like there's Southwest has a heavy Hispanic base, so sometimes there's cultural, not cultural barriers, sometimes there's language barriers. Like what are some of the things we do to make sure we don't leave people behind who have cultural or language barriers within the programs of the city of Detroit?
Well, we, again, in our career centers, we have folks that are called resource navigators, and as well as our career coaches. And so we actually have career centers located in those specific cultural communities. And so where need be, we have people that can do translation, as well as offering them resources to ESL, where that might inhibit someone from getting a job.
Okay. And then the second question, again, I hope I get this right, but I want to kind of expand it. It just talks about clearly we're focused on in Detroit getting citizens ready for opportunities straight out of high school if college is not the plan. But do we have any programs that are specific to post-secondary? You've been to college, but now you're trying to find a job in Detroit. Does it still apply there as well?
It does, right? So we have, because we serve over 2,000 employers a year, there are job opportunities that abound. I think today, we've probably got about 14,000 jobs that are posted. And so even if you went to college but don't quite know how to navigate all the positions that are out there, that people can still contact the system and get hooked up with the career coach and have that same conversation. And then the Grow Detroit's Young Talent Program, although it sounds like youth, it is from 14 to 24.
Aha. Say that again. I didn't
14 to 24. And so we have plenty of folks that are Detroiters who are young people that go away to college for most of the year and then come home and want to work for the summer. And so we certainly can help them get connected to job opportunities as well, those folks that are maybe 18 to 24 early career type experiences.
And can you touch on what some of those jobs look like?
Oh man, there are an abundance of positions. Sure. So we certainly have opportunities in skilled trades because we're finding that even though folks might go to college, they're like, this might not be for me. And so we have great relationships with our union partners for some of those opportunities. We have great relationships with the healthcare community, with Henry Ford Health System as one. There are others, even with the city of Detroit. So, there's all sorts of departments within the city. You want to work for one of those departments, you certainly can do that too. And then we have great relationships with other large employers like DTE Energy and MGM. And so if you've got an interest in tech or customer service or whatever it might be. So it is not just one type of job, but there are all sorts of career pathways along those target industries and jobs that I referenced earlier.
Jason, let me add a couple of things.
Sure.
So to the question of these things being available to people, at different stages in life. So the programs that I described, Michigan Reconnect, this tuition-free pathway to higher education, your only requirement is that you live in Michigan and you're over 25, period. There is no other requirement. And that, again, is fully funded and it continues to be. The Futures for Frontliners program, the only requirement there was not an age requirement, it's that you were working every day in person during the pandemic, basically. And so these are broadly available for a reason to not discriminate against folks. The second thing I'd add is when we're talking about barriers that may reduce people's perception of or actual eligibility to join an applicant pool for a position. One of the significant barriers, and Dana mentioned it, is people who may have some form of criminal record. And one of the things that we enacted in 2020 was something called Clean Slate. The state of Michigan now has a broad-ranging, automatic criminal record expungement program. It's the most progressive and expansive in the country. Now, we're in the midst of finalizing the implementation of the automatic component, but Michigan for a long time has had a criminal record expungement regime that while almost 40% of people in Michigan have a record, only 7% of eligible people ever participated in that program because it was long, it was expensive, you had to wait a long time, you had to hire a lawyer to navigate it for the most part. We've worked to break down that barrier. And once fully implemented, which should be by some point next year, this will make over the next 10 years between 800,000 and 1 million people in the state of Michigan job eligible, housing eligible, education program eligible. And this will broaden the set of people who are available to work in all sorts of industries and sectors a great deal. The final thing is that we have also piloted something. I did a partnership with the Attorney General, Dana Nessel, for piloting a program called Jobs Court. And what Jobs Court is for people who have certain non-assaultive, relatively minor offenses, rather than being sent to jail, they are matched with a local employer to basically complete the training and do work on the job. They do it for a year. This goes away from their record. We launched this, this program in Detroit at a Goodwill facility, and focused in partnership with them last year. So these are, again, we're trying to work again at the state level from a policy and program perspective. How do we, remove these things that keep people out of your applicant pool in the first place and enable them to be connected to opportunity?
That's amazing. I mean, to be a community of second chances, the only way to actually speak to it is to actually do it. So with the state leading that effort, I know many corporations, including mine, we've taken the whole convicted of a felony off the application because it's, you to your point, what does that mean? We got to dig a little deeper in the interview process and get to know the person as opposed to taking away the opportunity to have the conversation in the first place. So. Anything else from our esteemed panel? Any closing words?
I'll just jump in there with, there's a stat that Opportunity at Work published in their Rise with the Stars report that 70 million Americans are skilled through alternative routes. And so that's what's exciting about some of these efforts that we're undergoing right now, because that widens our array in terms of the talent available. And as we excel into our all-electric future, that's where the opportunity lies in terms of how we can really embrace that talent and bring them into livable wage opportunities. So pretty excited about that work and working with the different partners to make that happen.
Excellent.
And I'll just say nothing is constant but change. But we are, as Lieutenant Governor said, we are on the cusp of some major change here in the state. We have resources here. We've got people whose hearts and minds and their hustle is in this. And so if we are able to take advantage of this opportunity, this really special time, we're going to see some change with regard to the equitable landscape in our state.
Absolutely.
As I say, for everyone here, and this is probably true of most of the people at this conference, at some point in their career, someone took a chance on them.
Amen.
Someone made a bet on them. And so I think this conversation, when we're talking about, again, opening yourself up to the obvious, demonstrable, quantifiable benefit that diversity represents in terms of an opportunity for growing your enterprise, it's time for you to take a bet on more people. And I would challenge you to do that.
Absolutely.
Challenge accepted. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you.